Hello and welcome to this week's Texas Alliance for Life update. We have a special interview segment recorded for you today with a past board member, an amazing minister and community leader with over 20 years of experience in ministry. He served as director of Lifeguard, a sexual risk avoidance, sex, and character education program for youth. He founded and served as the lead pastor of Full Life Community Church in Pflugerville, Texas for 9 years. I live in Pflugerville, so I think that's awesome. He was a maturity and ministry pastor at Greater Mount Zion Baptist Church in Austin, Texas, and the founder and campus staff member of Texas Gospel Fellowship with InterVarsity Christian Fellowship at the University of Texas at Austin. There he grew the ministry to over 130 students in 4 years. Corey Tabor currently serves as the chaplain and director of faith engagement for the Republican Party of Texas. And he is the founder and president of Triple I Coaching. Welcome, Corey. Did I say Triple I right? Did I get that part? Yep. Awesome. Corey, can you tell our viewers a little bit more about your background with Texas Alliance for Life and the pro-life community in general?
Well, yes, thanks so much for having me. Texas Alliance for Life has been instrumental in me understanding the life issue as I was working at what is now the Source for Women as a director of Lifeguard. I got a chance to come to a number of the banquets and hear from pro-life speakers like Star Parker and Abby Johnson, and they began to help me see the issue of life and how important it was. And while working there as well, really started to see how important it was in the Black community for us to understand the impact that abortion is having on our communities. And so I decided to serve on the board for 5 years and served as the secretary for a number of those years. And it really kind of ushered me into this pro-life world through being a part of Texas Alliance for Life and also working at the Source for Women.
That's awesome. Well, you wrote a blog post for us that is the #1 post that comes up in Google search when people search for Black Lives Matter in the womb. I looked today just to see if it was still the first thing that pops up, and it is. And so we know we have a lot going on in our country right now, a lot going on in our world right now around Black Lives Matter. And so as people have been searching that, they've come across your article, and it's been our top hit web page, this blog post that you wrote for 2 weeks in a row. And we did share it on Twitter. We did also put it out there, but I believe that it's gaining traction for more than just because we shared it on Twitter. And, for those of you who don't know what our mission is at Texas Alliance for Life, it's to protect the fundamental right to life of all innocent human beings and to promote respect for their value and dignity from the moment of conception until natural death. So we oppose abortion, the advocacy of it, the practice of it, except to preserve the mother's life. And so this is where these two worlds collide, this Black Lives Matter movement, this uprising that we're seeing in our country, and Black Lives Matter in the womb, which falls under the umbrella of our mission statement. We're seeing these two things kind of collide, and your blog post blowing up. And so that's why we wanted to interview you today. And I would love for you to share with our viewers more about your blog and your heart on the issue of protecting Black lives in the womb.
Well, it's interesting. I got started developing this concept while I was pastoring. We did a series on Black Lives Matter back after the Ferguson incident with Mike Brown. And as a result of that, I wanted to make sure we dealt with education. I wanted to make sure we dealt with economic development. I wanted to make sure we dealt with, the issue of fathers and in the home. But in the end, I also knew that we needed to address the life issue because abortion is the #1 killer of Black people in America. I felt like we couldn't address Black Lives Matter and not address the Black Lives Matter in the womb, because so many of the Black lives don't make it out of the womb due to abortion in our nation. And so the blog was designed to show value of life, to help people understand that we are all fearfully and wonderfully made, that we all have value from the time that we're conceived in our mother's womb, and that no matter what the length of the life of a person is, whether it be minutes after birth, whether it be 10 weeks after conception and never making it to delivery, or whether it be, living in a nursing home at 90 years old with Alzheimer's and dementia, all of those lives are important to God, but they also should be important to us. So that was kind of the heart of why I wanted to write this article about the significance of Black lives mattering in the womb.
They absolutely do. And it breaks my heart to see Planned Parenthood jumping out there and putting statements out supporting the Black Lives Matter movement in light of the fact of their eugenics in their founding with Margaret Sanger and even Guttmacher. It's been frustrating for the pro-life movement to see them try to get out there and just jump on and protest, knowing that they target Black communities and minority communities, and that so many Black babies die at the hands of Planned Parenthood abortion doctors. Eugenics did play a key role in the organization's founding. And I've seen several statistics stating the majority of Planned Parenthood facilities are in minority and African American communities. So they're acting like a friend of the movement while they're killing Black babies in staggering numbers. And here in Austin, Planned Parenthood has a facility directly across the street from Hudson-Tillotson University, a traditionally Black college, and it's been there for decades. According to the CDC's numbers, also in 2016, Black women make up 36% of abortions in the country, yet Black Americans make up only 13% of the population. I know you mentioned a little bit about touching on fatherhood and leadership in your sermons to the congregation. I just want to ask you to elaborate a little bit on that, how it makes you feel as a Black man, father, leader, and minister to hear Planned Parenthood say Black Lives Matter, while at the same time completely ignoring the innate God-given value of the Black unborn child. And then how does that motivate you to continue responding?
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge that we have with Planned Parenthood is that their messaging always comes across as positive. You know, a Planned Parenthood saying, I'm going to have children when I'm ready, but they don't support parenthood. Like, there's nothing in their program that helps a mother after she has a child. There's nothing in their program that provides any type of support to mothers after they have children, whereas a pregnancy center with the women's health programs here in the state of Texas are caring for mothers up through the third birthday of the child and even beyond that oftentimes. And so again, the messaging of Black Lives Matter to say we care about the lives of people who have been born by choice, but we also believe people should have the choice to eliminate the lives that are in their womb. And for even them to use the frame or the terms like pro-choice when they don't really support the choice of having children. That's not a part of their mission or a part of what they do. And so I think their messaging across the board has been contradictory to, you know, what it means to be Black. Like, I feel like our communities had our children being taken away during slavery. We had children being taken away during the whole sharecropping experience, during Jim Crow. I mean, throughout our history, our children have been taken from us, and to say we're not going to support lives being here because we don't agree with the circumstances in which they were created, that to me is a contradictory message to what it means to be Black, you know? And I don't know a mother in the Black community growing up that would say children shouldn't be born. They may have to have family members help them with it. They may have to be involved in some other situations to get the support that is needed, but that's not what our history and our background teaches us. So that's the challenge for me. And it motivates me to want to just let people know the truth. I didn't know about abortion prior to coming and working at a pregnancy center. And I feel like it's something that's kind of pushed under the rug a lot of times in our communities. It's not a main focus of what we talk about as much as what I hear in people who grew up in more pro-life communities, so to speak. And so I think we need to tell the truth, give the information, educate people about it, and then help them think about how illogical it is for us as a community to be eliminating our offspring.
As a mother, I talk about Mama Bear a lot. I have 4 kids, and my kids know when I say Mama Bear is about to roar that I am about to go to bat for them for something that they went through that I feel like was unjust. Also, as a mother, I am trying not to cry for the Black community and the loss of their children over so many generations for so many reasons. It is very unjust. And so just hearing you say that just stirred my heart. So I both want to cry and want to roar. And I hope more hearts are touched by that reality today. There are many of us who can't understand that, and many of us are listening. Absolutely. You know, you mentioned earlier that you served as the director at Austin Life Care Pregnancy Center, and now it's called the Source for Women. You were there for over 7 years. So in your role there, how did you minister to African American women, and how also did you see racial inequality, racial injustice, Planned Parenthood propaganda play out in their lives? You know, I imagine you could probably see how it had played out in their lives when they came to you asking for help or asking for guidance. So I would love to hear a little bit about that today. And then also, how are you effective at reaching African American women?
Yeah, so I mean, while I was there, my primary role was in running the sex ed program. So I was on the preventative side of the program, really trying to help young people understand how sexual activity could lead to a lot of the risk that we want them to be able to avoid, whether it be, you know, pregnancy, whether it be STIs and STDs, or even just the emotional, psychological, spiritual, and relational effects of being sexually active outside of a marital relationship. But as a staff member there and a director there, I was able to interact with a lot of our staff who were interacting with mothers. And I think a lot of the challenges that they experienced when they talked about their pregnancies, when they would reach out to a group like Planned Parenthood, they were never really encouraged to consider life. They were often encouraged to kind of go down a pipeline of how can we help you solve this problem, so to speak. And there were many women who came to us who had had abortions in the past and would come to get healing through support groups that we had available for people who had had abortions, or people who now the source is in a former abortion clinic, which used to be a Whole Women's Health abortion clinic. And there are women who have had abortions there who are now coming back to keep their children. And so I think what I've heard from the women that I've talked to is that the procedures they've had and the ways that they've had the abortion occur, most of that has been done relatively well, but there's just very little support on the back end. And I think if we're going to care for women and be for women, we need to be for women, period, and care for them across the board. And that's the thing that I think Planned Parenthood pitches, that, you know, this is only 3% of what we do, and, you know, we're really there to help support women, you know, who really aren't ready to have a child, but they don't talk about the long-term impacts that that decision is going to have on them emotionally, psychologically, and even physically, you know. And so I just wish they would be completely honest with people about it. And if people made a decision after hearing all the facts, that's their decision. But the fact that there's just so much, in my opinion, misleading information about what is happening in a Planned Parenthood facility, that's the part that's challenging for me.
One of the things that stood out to me that you just said is that they talk to the women about how to solve the problem. Their unplanned pregnancy to them is a problem in their eyes that has to be solved, not something that they want to seek help with finding a solution for how they can move forward having the baby. Just the problem, no children are a problem in the womb. They're all gifts. And it's heartbreaking to me.
It is. I mean, we think about, you know, connecting this to George's life. I mean, at the end of his life, he called for his mama.
Yeah.
You know? And you can imagine these children who are being aborted saying, "Mom, what are you doing? Like, why are you not giving me a chance to live?" I say it all the time. Everybody who's pro-choice is a lie.
Yes.
Somebody gave them the choice to live. And we don't get to determine the circumstances in which we are conceived, and we don't get to determine the circumstances in which we're born into. But if we're given the chance to live, we have the opportunity to grow and make life better. I mean, you look at Ryan Bromberg, who, you know, was born as a result of his mom being raped, and she made a decision to carry to term and then allowed him to be adopted. And he's now got a beautiful family that he grew up in, but also a family that he's raised, including adopted children. And I just see because there's so much positive that can come from it. And I know I've never been pregnant, and I know how challenging that decision is for a woman to make. But either way, they're going to be dealing with some challenges. So at least they could have the challenge of allowing this child to live and their lives to be able to matter.
Right. One of the things that I share about my life is that when I was 22, I faced an unplanned pregnancy. Now, I was married, and I know that that's not always the case, but I was only married for 3 months. We actually were taking precautions not to have a baby, and nothing is foolproof. And so I got pregnant in my last year of college, had to delay my graduation. And I I'm okay sharing this now, but I remember thinking at the time, I've always been pro-life. I would never have had an abortion. But something in me early on had to wrestle with the fact that it was unplanned. It wasn't what I planned for my life. I had plans to work, I had plans to make money. It disrupted everything that fit my 1-year plan or my 5-year plan. And I remember running one day and just having this flash thought after I'd found out that I was pregnant, that maybe my body will just naturally take care of this and I won't have to face this. And then it was only maybe a day or two later that I began to get my head wrapped around it and then get excited about it and then read all the books and buy all the right foods and whatnot. But now my son is 22 years old and he turns 23 this weekend. So I was 22 when I got pregnant, 23 when I had him, had no idea what I was doing. And so, that's not a teenager facing an unplanned pregnancy, but it was hard for me. And I know it's hard for a lot of women. And I'm really grateful that there are pregnancy resource centers, that there are people in the community like you, that women who are facing unplanned pregnancies can go to and get help and get guidance and get counseling when they need it. I'm on the board of one in Pflugerville. And I'm just amazed at all the work that you guys have done in the resource centers. And I know you've been a big part of that. So I have one last question for you today. And I would really love to know if you have any recommendations or suggestions for how those of us that are in the pro-life community can be more effective at reaching out to and communicating the value of life to the Black community.
Yeah, I think the big thing right now is to value all Black life, so I never want to see the pro-life community discount the pain of the loss of someone to police brutality because there are a lot of people in the Black community that are choosing to abort. The two don't connect, and one doesn't make the other less important. So that's first of all important. Secondly, I think it's very important to understand the ways that policies in our community do impact African Americans, the mass incarceration that we deal with, how the death penalty impacts our Black communities. Like, these are things that if we're going to be pro-life, we have to think about how do we want to see people live a positive life? Like, how do we communicate economic principles and practices that are going to help Black people do better? How do we fight for educational equality so that people have opportunities to live better? How do we make sure that we give people the ability to build a legacy through owning a home and through owning their own business? So it's a holistic perspective on how we address the life issue. And I think when we do that effectively, we're going to win over more hearts. We can't build our campaigns and our messaging around a lot of the policies that tend to hurt African Americans and then expect them to listen to the life issue just about life in the womb. So I think that's important to be able to balance those things.
I hear you saying that it is a holistic approach. It's kind of everything coming together for the overall good and changes that need to happen really to best benefit the lives of the Black community in general and the life issue.
Yes.
Am I correctly?
Yes, that's correct. And I'm going to tell you something. I really believe that when Black lives do well in America, America will do well. I think that we have a ability to change the tide of what's going on in our nation because of the impact we have and because of the influence we have. And I think the way that this nation was built on the backs of Black lives, I think there's a reciprocity where we as a nation can benefit when we have valued the life of Black people.
Yes, I do agree. And I think that we're all in this together. There's so many organizations that need to come together, legislators. There's a lot of parts to play in that. And I just want to thank you today for talking with us about it, helping us learn a little bit more, and just sharing your heart on the issue in general and as it pertains to life. I appreciate it so much.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.